Welcome back, everyone. The entire history of the Siege of Vienna in 1683. Yeah, this is history. I'm Shields. This is what we do. We react to history. This is a treat, really, for both of us, right? One, it's gonna be a fun video. I just know. Two, I have no idea about this event, the Siege of Vienna. I do have like some idea. First off, is this where you have the winged hussars? I think it is. Two, this is the Ottomans sieging Vienna, right? I think that's it. That's all I know. Anyway, let's go.
12th of September, 1683, Vienna. The Ottoman army, led by Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, had been besieging the Austrian capital for the best part of 2 months. Despite his best efforts, the city had not yet fallen, and time was running out. That morning, a coalition relief army made up of Polish, German and Austrian forces arrived on the outskirts of Vienna and began to engage the besieging
These are the winged hussars.
Ottoman troops. The battle had raged all day, but at around 5 p.m, just as Kara Mustafa was planning one last all-out assault to take the city, an officer from his Janissary Corps burst into his tent, panic-stricken, and began pointing outside, exclaiming news the Ottoman vizier did not want to hear. On the western side of the battlefield, the Polish king, Jan Sobieski, had formed up 4 immense contingents of cavalry, ready to charge. With a wave of his sword, the King of Poland, at the head of his elite winged hussars, gave the order to attack. 18,000 horsemen thundered down the hillside
Isn't this the largest cavalry charge of all time?
towards the Ottoman positions, each of them determined to break the siege with the tips of their lances. The largest cavalry charge in history had just been unleashed.
It's crazy. $230 earlier.
It had been over 200 years since the Ottomans made their presence truly known on the world stage by capturing Constantinople, the esteemed capital of the once mighty Byzantine Empire, in the year 1453. In the decades following this seismic event, the Ottomans went on to bring virtually all of southeastern Europe and much of the Near East under their domain by the turn of the 1530s. For many of Europe's rulers, however, particularly the Habsburg dynasty, which controlled enormous swathes of territory across the southern and central parts of the continent,
Especially in the 16th century.
the advance of the Muslim Ottomans into Christian lands posed a significant threat. Indeed, to some, including the Pope in the Vatican, the spread of Islam into Europe was viewed as divine retribution for the devastating destruction unfurled across the Muslim world by the Crusades of centuries past. To the Ottoman sultans, though, now residing in the Topkapi Palace in Constantinople, the pursuit of conquest was inspired by their claims to be the legitimate successors of the Roman Empire, which in the latter part of its existence had been split into 2 entities and ruled separately, with the eastern portion from Constantinople and the western portion from Rome.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing. We talked about that in length before. I mean, I don't consider them a continuation of the Roman Empire. They definitely do. Technically, I don't even consider the HRE a continuation. I say the Western fell in 476 and the Eastern fell in 1453, and that was it.
Having
But,
already brought
whatever.
much of the former eastern provinces under their rule, the Ottomans naturally envisaged bringing those territories further to the west under their domain also, with aspirations to conquer Italy and the eternal city of Rome itself. However, these grand ambitions could not be fulfilled without first obtaining the hypothetical key that would unlock the rest of Europe to Ottoman expansion. The city of Vienna, capital of the Austrian Habsburg lands, was a central linchpin and
This is interesting, isn't it? Because it's so it's Vienna. I don't know if this is technically the de facto capital right now of the HRE, but let's just say it is. You have the Ottomans who believe that they are a continuation of the Roman Empire. You have the Holy Roman Empire that believe they're a continuation of the Roman Empire. And then you have the leaders in Constantinople, one of the former capitals of the Eastern Roman Empire. attacking Vienna, the capital of the Holy Roman Empire, to get to Rome, which is it's crazy.
Long coveted prize in the dream of Ottoman conquest. It occupied a crucial strategic position, situated where Western and Eastern Europe converged, at the meeting point of two of the continent's most formidable natural defences.
The Alps and what else?
The foothills of the Alps and the mighty River Danube.
Oh, okay.
Taking Vienna would allow any army to march north, south or west across the rest of Europe, and the Ottomans knew this.
Very strategic. I never thought about Vienna that way.
By the year 1529, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent personally led his army and laid siege to the city, but failed to capture it, in part due to overstretched logistics and poor weather that demoralized his troops. After this first unsuccessful attempt, Ottoman expansion into the heart of Europe stalled, as more accessible areas for conquest opened up, such as the Mediterranean. As a result, a tense frontier between Ottoman and Habsburg lands was established across Hungary, and although periodic skirmishes flared up from time to time, Vienna itself was not directly threatened again for well over 100 years.
And we also learned that a lot of the Christian and the Western-leaning Balkan individuals fled to the Austrian-Hungary, the Habsburg Empire, HRE, and then they were kind of like on the front lines in defense of this. It's crazy to think about.
By the late 17th century, however, a combination of political and religious tensions had rekindled this dormant desire for the Ottomans to thrust into Habsburg lands. The Holy Roman Emperor Leopold I was a staunch defender of the Catholic faith, and his efforts to impose a counter-reformation against the Protestants within his realm had provoked deep resentment. A large Protestant population was situated in Hungary, and soon a rebellion, led by the nobleman Imre Tököly, had broken out and begun to seek support from the Ottoman Empire.
That's interesting.
Sensing an opportunity to prove himself and advance his position within the Ottoman court, Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha provided military aid to Tököly and even recognized him as a client king of Upper Hungary.
Oh, wow.
In the territories he had seized from Habsburg control. In return, Tököly urged the Ottomans to strike directly at the Habsburg seat of power and attack Vienna. Kara Mustafa seized on Tököly's pleas and convinced Sultan Mehmet IV to declare war on the Holy Roman Empire in August.
That's crazy to think about, man.
1682, framing it as a campaign to aid their Hungarian allies, although everyone knew that Vienna was clearly the ultimate objective. Kara Mustafa spent months gathering a massive army and arranging logistics. Roads and bridges in the Balkans were repaired and supply depots stocked, as the Ottomans marshalled troops from across their vast empire for the coming expedition. By early 1683, a huge field army, possibly as large as 170,000 men, had assembled at Edirne and began to march north-westward. As the Ottomans began their advance on Vienna, it became clear that a united European response would be needed to repel them. Unfortunately, Europe's political landscape at this time was anything but unified. For centuries, the balance of power across the
It's 1683, so this is way past the 30 Years' War. Trying to imagine who would be their direct allies.
continent had been contested between Habsburg Austria and Bourbon France. Back in 1536, the French had even formed an alliance with the Ottomans to keep their Habsburg rivals under pressure.
Yeah, this is King Louis XIV.
And as a result, when Emperor Leopold I appealed for help against the advancing Turks, King Louis XIV of France pointedly declined. But there were some in Europe who were willing to help. Pope Innocent XI recognized the Ottoman advance as a peril to Christendom and worked tirelessly to forge a coalition to save Vienna. The Pope offered subsidies to Leopold's allies and attempted to rally other major Catholic powers, namely the Holy Roman Empire's German princes, as well as the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth.
Huge swab of territory over there.
Headed by King Jan III Sobieski. By late June 1683, Kara Mustafa's vast army, accompanied by siege artillery, camels, horses, and a myriad of camp followers, had crossed into Austrian lands. In addition to the core Ottoman regiments of elite Janissary infantry and Sipahi cavalry, the expedition was augmented by forces from several vassal states, with contingents from Transylvania, Wallachia, and Moldavia.
So this is not just Ottomans.
As well as an auxiliary horde of Tatar cavalry
Wow.
from the Crimean Khanate. Back in Vienna, Emperor Leopold I, now fully aware that his capital was the intended target, made the fateful decision to abandon the city rather than risk being caught in a siege. On the 7th of July, Leopold and his court fled, carrying whatever treasures and important archives they could.
Did they actually think that there was a chance that they would? I mean, obviously there always will be a chance, but it must have been really bad for them to flee.
Along with the imperial retinue, as many as 60,000 Viennese residents, roughly half of the city's population, also evacuated in panic.
I guess, like, not only because they evacuated in panic, these are the people that could evacuate. So it's probably like the lower class that stayed at home,
seeking refuge from the coming battle. This exodus left Vienna severely under strength, though a core of determined inhabitants remained behind to defend the walls. Command of Vienna's defences fell to Count Ernst Rudiger von Starhemberg, a hard-nosed Austrian general who had around 15,000 soldiers at his disposal, including regular infantry and citizen volunteers, plus about 370 cannons. In the days before the enemy arrived, final defensive preparations were put in place, with the suburbs and outlying dwellings of the city demolished and cleared to create an open and barren killing ground approaching the walls. On the 14th of July, the Ottoman army reached Vienna, and Kara Mustafa pitched his luxurious command tent as the centerpiece of a sprawling Ottoman camp, turning the grassy plain into a virtual city of tents and pavilions for his army. As customary, the Grand Vizier sent emissaries to the city gates with an ultimatum: surrender and all those inside would be spared, but resist and everyone would be put to the sword.
What do you do?
Starhemberg blatantly refused to capitulate, being well aware of what had happened just days earlier at the town of Perchtoldsdorf, just south of Vienna,
What happened
where the
there?
civilians had surrendered to the Ottomans on terms, only to be massacred
Nah, we fighting.
and enslaved regardless. Vienna's defenders were resolved to fight to the last man, knowing that death would be a better fate than what would await them should they surrender.
Love it.
The Ottoman siege operations commenced in earnest 3 days later. They began digging a network of zigzagging trenches towards Vienna's walls, allowing their siege guns to move closer under cover.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that this was like a thing that they did. So that's giving me a little bit more insight to the tactics.
The Ottoman artillery, around 130 field cannon, opened fire, bombarding the city day and night. But the effect on the stoutly built walls proved minimal.
I'm just loving this animation.
Denied an early assault, Kara Mustafa turned to tunneling and mining beneath the fortifications. Teams of Ottoman sappers dug extensively beneath the bastions, propping their tunnels with timber and packing them with gunpowder charges to detonate and blow gaps in Vienna's defences. The Viennese, in turn, frantically dug countermines, listening for digging noises and attempting to intercept or flood the enemy tunnels.
Can you imagine all the paranoia that probably would sweep over all the people that are guarding the wall? Like, did you hear that? Did you hear that? Man.
Throughout August 1683, this subterranean duel raged beneath the city, even as incessant cannon fire and sniper skirmishes persisted above ground.
That's crazy. I didn't know this all happened.
Repeatedly, Ottoman mines succeeded in destroying sections of the walls, only for the defenders to rush forward and plug the breaches. Brutal hand-to-hand fighting ensued in the rubble, as janissaries swarmed into the gaps, and Vienna's soldiers and townsmen fought them off.
What are they? throwing? Are these like small little bombs? Like grenades?
Inside the city, conditions were deteriorating. The Ottoman blockade had cut off nearly all supplies, leading to shortages of food and water. Disease, such as dysentery and typhus, soon spread among the soldiers and civilian population, who were already weakened by hunger. By early September, after nearly 2 months of siege, Vienna's situation had become dire. Of Starhemberg's original garrison, thousands had become casualties of combat or disease, leaving barely 5,000 soldiers fit for duty. The Ottomans, meanwhile, had been suffering attrition of their own. Constant sorties by the Viennese and sniper fire took their toll.
Sniper fire. It's so weird to hear sniper fire. They didn't have scopes, did they? Did they?
And life in the besiegers' trenches, under fire and in the summer heat, led to many Ottoman losses. Even as Vienna's ordeal reached crisis point, help was on the way. The appeals of Emperor Leopold and Pope Innocent XI had succeeded in assembling a coalition of forces from various European states to relieve the besieged city. The core of this force was composed of the Polish-Lithuanian army led by King Jan Sobieski, which amounted to approximately 30,000 troops, including the famed heavy cavalry of the Winged Hussars. Meanwhile, forces from various Holy Roman Empire principalities were converging as well. The Imperial Army under Duke Charles of Lorraine was now joined by contingents sent by the Elector of Saxony, the Elector of Bavaria, as well as troops from Baden, Franconia, Swabia, and other German states.
So they're all coming to rally their fellow city. And then Lithuania, what was their incentive to come?
Even some volunteer units, like 5,000 Zaporizhian Cossacks from Poland's Ukrainian territories.
Now that's interesting. So I'm guessing they're bribes. There's got to be some sort of bribe, right?
Joined the coalition host. By early September, this Christian coalition army had rendezvoused north of the Danube, totaling around 80,000 troops. Despite linguistic and cultural differences, the Allied commanders quickly established a cooperative leadership structure. King Sobieski was acknowledged as the overall commander-in-chief, while Charles of Lorraine, an able general in his own right, became his second-in-command, but remained in charge of the Imperial and German troops. On the 6th of September, the long-awaited relief army crossed the Danube about 30 kilometers northwest of Vienna using pontoon bridges. This coalition army moved to the south bank of the river and positioned itself to approach the city from the west and...
Obviously, if it's a river, though, I just want to give you clarification of probably what they're dealing with. On a pontoon bridge, these are probably a little bit higher. And then the river itself is a moving force of water. It's not this stagnant. I'm not disregarding their animation. I just want to like recontextualize the situation. It is an effort to cross that Danube, probably.
North, a direction which had not been anticipated or defended appropriately by the Ottoman besiegers. A few days later,
Ooh, I like this.
on the 11th of September.
By the way, this is history. This is the first time I've ever seen them do like a different style of like video. They usually do something a lot different than this. I really do like what I'm looking at right now.
Sobieski's forces began to emerge onto the high ground of the Kahlenberg Ridge, overlooking the imperial city and the sprawling Ottoman camp around it. That afternoon, Allied forward detachments clashed with Ottoman outposts in the hills, and as dusk fell, the relief army lit signal fires on the hilltops to announce their arrival to the desperate Viennese below. That night, Sobieski, Lorraine, and the other Allied commanders finalized their battle plan for the next day. They arrayed their combined army along the northern slopes, planning to sweep down in a right hook formation against the Ottomans. The Allied deployment positioned the Imperial Austrian and other German contingents on the left flank, closest to the Danube, with Charles of Lorraine commanding that sector. In the centre were the additional Imperial, Bavarian and Saxon forces, and on the right wing stood Sobieski's Polish troops, with the bulk of the cavalry. Down in the Ottoman camp, Kara Mustafa, belatedly realized that a large Christian relief force was positioned on the heights above him. The Grand Vizier faced a fateful decision: abandon the siege and reorient his entire army to confront the coalition force, or maintain pressure on the city while meeting the attackers with only part of his troops.
I feel like he's going to do the second option, and it's going to be a critical mistake.
Confident that Vienna was on the verge of collapse, Kara Mustafa opted to continue the siege with the majority of his forces,
Maybe he just didn't have the right intelligence.
while dispatching a fraction of his army to hold off the approaching enemy in the field. Throughout the night, the Ottomans hastily redeployed about 20,000 to 30,000 men from their trenches to form a defensive front facing the Allied enemy. The bulk of the Janissaries and other elite units, however, remained in the siege works, ready to renew the assault on the city at...
Well, in defense of Mustafa, though, if you completely turn your back, Strahlenberg could deploy troops out of Vienna, and you could have a sandwich, or a pincer, whatever you want to call it.
first light. On the morning of the 12th of September, the climactic battle for Vienna began. Around 4 AM, waves of Ottoman skirmishers and cavalry struck the imperial troops under Duke Charles of Lorraine's command on the Allied left wing, attempting to disrupt their formation. In fierce combat, the Austrians counterattacked and managed to hold their ground. As daylight broke, the Allies steadily gained organisation and pressed forward. By mid-morning, the battle was fully joined across the lines. On the Allied left and centre, various Austrian and German regiments advanced methodically against the Ottoman right wing. They stormed several fortified villages that the Ottomans held as outposts, notably Nussdorf and Heiligenstadt, north of the city. Each village taken was cleared with bayonet and pike, providing a foothold for further advance. Ottoman resistance was tenacious. Kara Mustafa committed his provincial Tatars and Sipahi cavalry in repeated counterattacks across the plains to stall the Allied push.
This is an amazing image right here. The chaos just from this image alone. And I like how we might get caught up too much about the winged hussars and all of that, but this is clearly not that. This is clearly what he just spoke about, the Tatars and the Ottoman cavalry and how they defended or did counterattacks. I love it.
For a time, these counterattacks slowed the imperial advance, forcing intense engagements and causing casualties on both sides. But by midday,
They're just moving, and this is even without the Polish forces moving forward.
Lorraine's forces had captured most of the high ground on the left and were threatening to break through the Ottoman lines. Inside Vienna itself, Kara Mustafa's planned final assault had failed. Ottoman sappers had intended to ignite one last colossal mine beneath one of the bastions and blow a hole in the city walls for a final all-out attack. Vienna's defenders, however, had discovered and disarmed the charges in the nick of time, forcing many of the Ottoman troops to be pulled back and face the relief army instead. Meanwhile, on the Allied right wing, the sector under King Sobieski, progress had been slower. The terrain there was more rugged, cut
Maybe not that ideal for horses.
by ravines and wooded slopes, which impeded the movement of troops, especially cavalry. Sobieski's Polish infantry gradually moved into position and engaged the Ottoman left, seizing the village of Gersthof by mid-afternoon, which lay...
Dang, this is just like quick. They're about to get surrounded, especially with the river as a barrier.
just ahead of the main Ottoman camp. By around 4 PM, the Ottomans were effectively caught in a vice, fighting on two fronts against the imperial troops pushing from the north and the Polish forces advancing from the west.
Sobieski's cavalry is almost as a reserve.
Sensing this, both Charles of Lorraine and King Sobieski realized that the moment had come to deliver the final decisive blow.
Yeah.
In the late afternoon, Lorraine directed a renewed assault by the Imperial and German forces on the Allied left. They stormed the villages of Unterdobling and Oberdobling, driving the Ottoman forces from these positions and rolling up the enemy's right flank. As the Habsburg troops closed in on the central Ottoman redoubt, an earthwork known as the Türkenschanze, Sobieski prepared for this climactic charge. He had been holding back his elite Polish heavy cavalry,
Yeah, like a reserve.
for exactly this moment, just as the Ottoman lines were beginning to waver. To test the enemy's strength, Sobieski sent a small vanguard of 120 winged hussars in a probing charge down the slope. These armoured lancers, with their majestic wings on their backs, plunged into the Ottoman lines. Though this initial charge suffered heavy casualties, it confirmed that the Ottomans' left flank was vulnerable and losing
I love how they test, like it's like you're putting your foot in the water.
cohesion. Many Ottoman soldiers, seeing the Christian banners so close and hearing rumours of failure
Oh, they're routing.
elsewhere on the battlefield, had begun to lose heart and slip away from the fight. Kara Mustafa himself, who had been directing the battle from the Türkenschanze
Yeah, he's gone. He's fled.
elevation, realised that his position was now untenable and withdrew his headquarters further south, effectively relinquishing direct control of the battle. Then, at around 5 p.m, King Sobieski gave the order for the full mass of horsemen to advance, thereby unleashing the largest cavalry charge in history. In 4 great columns, 18,000 horsemen thundered down the hillside. At the forefront were some 3,000 of the Polish winged hussars, led by Sobieski himself, their lances poised as they galloped towards the Ottoman positions. Like a massive wave, the Christian cavalry smashed into the Ottoman left wing,
Jeez.
scattering the remaining formations under the shock of thousands of horse hooves and pointed lances. The impact of the charge was decisive. The Ottoman troops, already fatigued from hours of combat and demoralised by the steady collapse of their flanks, were unable to withstand this immense assault, and many threw down their weapons and fled the battlefield. Sobieski's horsemen drove straight into Kara Mustafa's main camp, overrunning the artillery positions and collapsing the Grand Vizier's luxurious tent. Virtually at the same time, the garrison of Vienna sallied out from the city,
There we go. That's what I was
pouring
hoping.
forth from the gates to attack the Ottoman trenches. Within 3 hours of the charge, just
Another beautiful picture.
as nightfall was descending, the Allied forces realised they had achieved a crushing victory, leaving the Ottomans in full headlong retreat. King Sobieski entered the abandoned Turkish camp and, in a gesture echoing ancient triumphs, sent a message to Pope Innocent XI, paraphrasing Julius Caesar:
I came, I saw, I conquered.
Venimus, vidimus, Deus visit. We came, we saw, God conquered.
Oh.
The victors found the Ottoman camp overflowing with war booty. Tents, gold, food stores, horses, camels,
That's perfect for the residents of Vienna, right?
and all manner of supplies were left behind in the hasty Ottoman retreat. So much loot was captured that it reportedly took a week for the Allied soldiers and Viennese to gather it all. For the vanquished Ottomans, their catastrophic defeat at Vienna was so complete that they lost practically all their artillery and supplies. In the days following the battle, Allied units pursued the fleeing Ottomans to harry them out of Habsburg territory. Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa fled southward in disgrace towards Belgrade, but did not survive long after. He was executed on the Sultan's orders 2 months later,
Dang.
on the 25th of December,
Why?
strangled with a silken cord, as was the Ottoman custom for disgraced commanders.
Oh my.
The Siege of Vienna had been the Ottoman Empire's best chance in generations to conquer the illustrious European capital, and its failure marked a clear turning point. From that moment on, Ottoman ambitions of conquering Europe came to an abrupt halt. In early 1684, spurred on by the Pope and buoyed by the success at Vienna, the Christian powers formed the Holy League, a broad coalition united to continue the war against the Ottoman Empire. This alliance included the Habsburg monarchy, Austria and its imperial allies, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the Republic of Venice, and later the Tsardom of Russia,
Which of course will be a continuation of Ottoman versus Russian fighting.
joined in 1686. With unprecedented unity, these states agreed to coordinate military campaigns on multiple fronts, which over the remaining years of the 17th century saw major Ottoman strongholds fall across Hungary, Serbia, Transylvania, Ukraine, the Black Sea, and the Mediterranean. Nevertheless, the Ottoman Empire would remain in existence for another 200 years, retaining a foothold across much of the Balkans. However, after Vienna in 1683, the Ottomans would never threaten the heart of Europe again.
This is so interesting because, like I told you guys at the beginning of the video, I genuinely did not know anything about this encounter, and I know there's probably a lot of videos out there, so litter my comments with other videos of the Siege of Vienna and what led up to this and so forth, because this is such an interesting part of history that it's a blind spot to me. It's right here. I don't see it, but I see a little bit of it now. So it's so interesting to see that it wasn't just the winged hussars or the winged hussars. It was a continuation of the imperial prince's imperial army and infantry, also with Polish infantry. But then, of course, Vienna itself had its holdout also help in the fight. But the Ottomans, they had a chance to really break through. And what would happen if Vienna fell? Well, obviously, they would still have a lot of problems with Habsburg and Polish Lithuania, but then they could possibly threaten an underbelly and then a pincer movement on Italy, because do they have Sicily at this time? I can't remember if they do or not. I just don't remember. But I don't think they do. But at the same time, they're trying to get Rome, and it's just like I said before, it's so interesting because the Ottomans believe they're Romans, and then you have the HRE, and then you have Vienna with the capital of the HRE, and then you have Rome, the internal city, and it's all trying to happen at once. And this is a time where technology of warfare is just as high tech as it's ever been, obviously, because it's, you know, the year that it's in. So you just kind of, it's such a tense moment in history. Love to learn more about it. So like I said, put some videos in my comments if you have any specifically for recommendations. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Appreciate you. Peace out and bye-bye.